Coming to you pre-recorded at Purple Studio, it's the podcast that talks about board games, the board gaming hobby, and how to become a social pariah to your friends. It's Boxfart! Now welcome your hosts for today's show, Red and Blue! Welcome to the Boxfart podcast. I am Blue.
And this is Red.
And this is a board gaming podcast about board gaming and the board gaming hobby with board games, gaming with boards, and boarding with games.
Some games don't even have boards.
Many games don't have boards. So one thing that I wanted to talk about after having 2 episodes out now, the chance to reflect on what a difference this is to now talk into a microphone as opposed to how you and I usually talk, which is just we talk about the games we're playing and the games we're excited for, and transitioning into actually trying to record it for posterity or, get our words out there. How do you feel about the change?
It's definitely different than, our casual conversations that we have. But just as you say, we do the same things. We talk about the same things that we do, but it feels, like there's more effort being put into it, or more preparation, certainly, being put into it than when we just talk off the cuff. But it's definitely just more of the same, which is great.
It is. I feel like the other day we had a conversation where we started to really get into talking about a board game that was coming out. And the first thought in my mind was, I should tell him to stop talking so that we can put this on the podcast. That changes your thought process, right? Especially when, I wouldn't say we're hungry for content, because I wouldn't have made this podcast if I didn't think that we could fill it up just by talking about board games and have that be the show. But I like a little bit of structure. I think you agree with that.
Yes, I completely agree. The structure is useful because you know better than anyone, we get off on tangents sometimes.
It's true.
Which we've gotten off on tangents on here as well, but not quite to the same extent.
No, it's true. It's true. So what are we going to be talking about this week, Red?
This week, we're going to be talking about the games that we played. We're going to do our normal board game standoff this week between Cockroach Poker and Skull.
Very excited about that one.
And our main topic this week is going to be culling games. When should you get rid of them?
Yeah, it's a great question. And then, of course, we'll end with
the much, much anticipated Boxfart.
Yes. It's my favorite part of the podcast. If I'm being honest, it's my favorite part of the podcast.
It's definitely fun.
Yes. So, let's start off the bat. What did we play this week? The first thing that we played recently was between myself, Blue, Red, Shamrock, and Mint all sat down to play for the first time with us the renowned game El Grande by Wolfgang Kramer and Richard Ulrich, put out by Hans im Glück. This is a pure area majority game. The closest I think we've played is a Reiner Knizia game called King's Road that reminded me of the scoring of first, second, and third place. I'm sure there's lots of games that have that. El Grande came out in 1995, so it's much older than King's Road. I'm not sure if it's older than another Knizia design that has that same thing. And, well, Reiner Knizia would be the first one to say, like, oh, no, I actually invented deck building before it was a popular thing. No, you didn't, buddy, but it's good that you put a really good implementation in the Quest for El Dorado. But El Grande is, how we talk about Race for the Galaxy being, that is a pure tableau builder. El Grande is a pure area majority game. That is what that game is.
Yeah, and it's definitely different than any other one, or than what I was picturing in my head when we sat down and started to play it, because I'd never played it before either. Didn't really know too much about it. Had kind of kept myself in the dark. It's been on your shelf for a couple of weeks, and we finally got it to the table. I was kind of expecting for lack of a better term, I'm going to say a risk kind of game where one player is removing the other player's components from the maps to take over complete control of a zone, but that's not what it is. It's very much you're putting your influence into the different map areas, and whoever currently has the most influence and second and third most influence scores a variable amount of points.
I was really surprised how often ties were a very important thing to think about. And I think the way that the designers apportioned the points in the different provinces was very important. You might have 5 points for first place, 4 points for second place, and 1 point for last place. That means if the first place person has 3 caballeros there, and the second and third person both have 1, the first person gets 5 points, and the other 2 score the next lowest, so those people only get 1 point. That's nice at the beginning of the game when you have one person for 1 point. But near the end of the game, it felt like I think I had 6 people in a place where I scored 1 point. I'm sure it was my own poor plays that did that. And fighting over more points and then getting fewer points when someone tied you and we both lost was a pivotal moment in the game.
I agree. I think that future plays will benefit from that knowledge.
Yes.
I think early in the game, spreading out and getting 1 or 2 people in multiple territories is super strong. Whereas towards the end of the game, you might want to try and focus on 2 or 3 different territories, trying to get that first or second place points. The other thing that we haven't mentioned yet is the absolute wild card of the Castillo being able to kind of hidden. You have to announce the Castillo is a castle, and during your turns, you can elect to put some of your units into it, and it's kind of a hidden box. And then at the end of the round, that box is opened, and you're able to apportion those units that you've stashed away in there into a single province, single state of Spain. So if you play your cards right, you're able to completely take over first place of a particular zone. And more than once, we had multiple people all go to the same place because it was a critical, critical area for that round.
Everything you said, coupled with the action selection mechanism, where there are cards with, it seemed like pretty strong effects for the lower amounts of people you could play, and weaker, quote unquote, weaker effects for the more people you could play, was a real tug of war, especially with what you said about putting people out all over the map. There's a card that's like, hey, choose a region on your little selector dial. You remove all the people from that region. Well, if you started out putting somebody in all these different regions, it's not that hard a decision. If you've doubled down on a single place and it's one of 2 that you have 6 in one and 5 in the other, that's a very devastating blow, potentially.
Absolutely. One thing that I literally just connected the dots on with the action selection, that screams of Raw to me, where you've got the cards of the different values, and you can, and in Raw you've got your 3 tokens, or what do they call your Sun Disk tokens with the different values, and you can choose to play them either early or late to try and win the spread in Raw. Similar with this game, where you've got your hand of cards and you can choose to use your high value cards early or late, try to hold on to them. I don't know why that just kind of rings similar to me.
I had not thought of that. That's a really good point. I have two things that I didn't care for. I really don't like games that rely on memory. I have a terrible memory, and so the whole Castillo mechanism was a memory aspect of like, oh, how many people did I throw in there? Oh, how many people did you throw in there? I like it in modern board games. It seems like they take that away because I don't think memory has anything to do with intelligence, so to speak.
I have to jump in.
Yeah.
For being someone who claims they have bad memory, you got to play, and you have played, Wilmot's Warehouse.
Oh.
You just got to do that aspect in the Castillo, and you'll be good to go.
Okay. I'm sure you're right.
Build a story around it.
Well, there's that whole thing of like your house, right? The way that you can memorize things is by walking through your house and assigning them. That's how people memorize pi to 1,000 digits.
Sure.
And how they memorize a seemingly disparate group of items is they put them in their house as they walk through, and they can do that. I'm sure that if I trained my brain to do that, but my youth was pretty raucous for having a good memory in my old age.
So, El Grande, I quite enjoyed it. I tend to like area control games, maybe a little bit more than you do. But what did you think?
I was stressed the entire time. Again, it's one of those games I can see this is friggin' brilliant. It definitely relies on the table's ability. If someone's making bad plays, it does affect a lot of what goes on. Because there's lots of games that we can play where you go, why did you do that? You don't benefit from that, and it just hurts me. And they go, well, it's already done. And you're like, oh, all right. Oh, man, it's all right. It's a friendly game. You got to sit back and just accept it. But more than anything else, the entire time I was watching people take actions, I was just like a big knuckle. I was one ball of nerves. That's not my kind of game, but I can absolutely see. I know people that will thrive on that game, that will love it. My coworker who has decided to go by Fuchsia, I think that the way he talks about playing with his brothers, would love that game.
Very good. The first game that I played this week was General Orders World War II, designed by the very accomplished designers David Thompson and Trevor Benjamin. They have also done the Undaunted series, published by Osprey Games. General Orders World War II is a 2-player, smallish box.
Skirmish, would you call it?
Yeah, skirmish, World War II skirmish game where there's no Allies axis, but it's 2 different colors. There's yellow and blue, I think, are the 2 colors in the box. And you play and battle out
the 2 best primary colors.
Well,
far and away, the 2 best primary colors.
You know what? I don't think so, but...
I want to tell a story real fast. I love baseball. And Red and I were throwing a baseball back and forth, and he asked me, "Why do you like baseball? It's so boring." And I said, "Well, I really like the statistics, and I like my team, and I like all these things." And he was like, "Well, I guess we can both agree that basketball is the 3rd worst." And I was like, "Yeah, I guess I can." He said, "No, false. Baseball's the 3rd worst." It was one of the best burns you've ever had. As much as I disagree with it, I loved that burn. It was a really good burn.
Thank you. I did myself proud that day. General Orders, though, it's a great game. It's a very simple combat system in the game where it's simple 1-for-1 removal, right? If you were the attacker and you move into a space, the defender gets to roll 1 die, remove that many pieces, and then after that, it's 1-for-1 removal, and whoever is left takes over control of the area.
It's partially deterministic. It's partially luck-based that can be changed with cards. It's a really good mechanism. I like that.
Yes, I very much like this game. It's tight, and what I think is cool about it is there's 2 different sides of the board that vastly change the gameplay. One side of the board is what they call the mountain side, and you can do like paradrops into your opponent's territory. And the other side is the island side, where one player plays as an attacking force off of aircraft carriers, and so they get airplanes, and the defenders kind of start with a small number of units spread all the way across the map, and they have to try to defend their island.
It's a really cool system. I like the initiative track. I like the cards. The cards are pretty impactful, or rather they can be impactful.
Oh, yeah.
There are tokens you can control in the middle of the board that will give you a boon. Like, you get to add more troops when you add more troops to the board, or you get extra cards, or whatever it is. It's a very fun game that has replayability. I very much like the fact that you don't have the Axis and Allies. You don't have one player forced to play the Nazis versus the Allies, right? You just get to be a color in a... I don't even know why they call it World War II, to be honest.
Yeah,
there's no real reason
it could
for
just
it.
be any generic military...
Yeah, maybe set in that time, right?
Yeah.
That era, right? General Orders is great. I still enjoy that game. Next game I played was Regicide. Regicide is a game put out by... it's designed by Paul Abrahams, Luke Badger, and Andy Richdale. Put out by Badgers from Mars, little publishing company. It is a game that you can play with a regular deck of cards. When I say regular, I mean 52 deck of cards, plus 2 jokers for some of the variants and player counts. Every suit has its own power. You're going against the face cards, and it's just an escalating, can I go through all 12 royals to win the game? I think I've beaten it 3 times with multiplayer. I've beaten it a bunch solo, but never with a good win rate. It's like the more times you use the crutch, the jokers in the game in solo, the lesser your victory. If you use both jokers, it's only a bronze victory. If you don't use any jokers, it's a gold victory. I've never gotten a gold victory. But it's a very fun game, especially solo.
It's a very fun game and brutally difficult.
Yeah.
I feel like my win rate is abysmal in it. I think I've won multiplayer 1 time.
I feel like you and I won once.
Yeah.
And a 2-player game. I've never won with 3 or more. It's a game Emerald and I play together. It's so easy to throw in a bag. I'm a huge fan of cribbage, so I can use those cards for Regicide, or we can just use them for cribbage. Having a deck of cards on me at all times, very important. And to be able to play a modern board game like that, or a card game, on the go, it's very nice.
And one thing that I'm surprised you didn't mention, because I know you love it, the art is so good.
Yeah. I am a sucker for unique decks of cards where every card is different. The artwork in that is phenomenal. It's you want to say it's like polygons, but I don't think that's an accurate depiction. The cool thing is that every character is slightly different than the others, but like all of one numerical value will all be the same type of character. Like I think all the 9s are dragons, and they all at somewhere on their body have their suit hidden in the artwork. It's so creative. It's so beautiful. The art by Sketch Goblin is the name of the designer. Really fantastic artwork on those cards. Really, really good. Really good. And I did back the Kickstarter for the Legacy campaign. We'll see how that is. I want to give them money more than anything else. I'm happy to give them money and happy to get a product that looks as nice as that looks like it's going to be.
The next game that I played this week was the small box game Mintworks, designed by Justin Blasky by 524 Labs. Mintworks there's a series of games, Mint games. Mintworks specifically is a worker placement game where you have, it's literally in a mint, like an Altoids kind of tin, and the premise of the game is you are trying to build out your town by spending your workers to buy the plans for buildings and then later construct the buildings. Each building gives you some kind of bonuses. There's different suits, so one of the suits of buildings might say worth X points for how many type of that building you have. One might be at the end of your turn you generate more resources, and your resources are your workers, which is what I think is cool. So each turn you get a little bit of resources from the bank, but if you go to buy the plans for a building, you put your workers out there, but the workers are the resource. So then they go back into the central supply, and then you kind of have to rebuild them.
I love seeing how people can mash down games into small boxes. I don't know that I found one that really fits the niche that I hope for. At some point, I'd like to try Mint Knight, which is a Mage Knight implementation that fits in an Altoids 10. There's lots of games that I'm like, oh, make it so small that you can carry it around with you. I just have yet to find one that's kept.
Definitely understandable. You know, what I like about this is I'm fortunate enough to have a board game coworker as well, similar to yourself, and it's a game that he brought to the office, and he likes it. He might not be quite as into the hobby as we are, but he can stand his own, hold his own when playing games because he's played with us multiple times.
He brought Mintworks?
Yeah, it's his game. It's not my game. Oh. And so it's something that we can play in 10 or 15 minutes while we're eating food, and it's a good time. And it supports up to 4 players, I think. So it's anywhere from 2 to 4.
That's pretty cool. You're going to have to give him a name. We did decide that while we are very just basic primary colors, red and blue, it seems like everybody else that we play games with wants some kind of shade of something. I'm expecting Goldenrod and Puce to come out at some point. Probably nobody's going to choose Puce, but
I'll have to talk with him.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, get him to choose a game. The last game on my list for play this week is an oldie but a goodie. It is Carcassonne by Klaus-Jürgen Rede. I'm thinking I'm saying that right, and it's Wrede. Put out by Hans im Glück in 2000. If you haven't played Carcassonne, I highly recommend you try it. I played it a lot in probably the 2010s because the digital version came out, and the group that I was hanging out with, everybody had that game. So at any given time, I had like 10 different games with friends going, and it's all asynchronous play. So you make a move, send it to them, they have a chance to send it back to you. I'd have 2, 3, 4 player games going on, and then there were expansions on top of that. There's the river and all these crazy things you can add on top of it. I have played Carcassonne to death. I've played so much of it. I've never gotten terribly good at it, but I know the tile bag of the base game enough that I can make informed plays. But I just happened to have my phone. I looked and I had it downloaded, and I said, you know what? I haven't played Carcassonne in a while. Let me try it out. Have you tried it?
I've never played it, and I know it's kind of a gateway game, similar to maybe and correct me if I'm wrong, similar to the weight of like a Catan.
I'd say it's lighter than Catan.
Okay, interesting. That surprises me. There are dozens of expansions for it at this point. It's almost daunting. As I walk through my friendly local game store, there's like the Carcassonne, like the base game, and then there's the big box that's the size of my car. It seems like it's humongous, and it says now includes 20 expansions, and I'm like, wouldn't even know where to start.
Here's my problem with games that have infinite expansions. Is after a while, I even have this happen to me where I have a box that is so chock-a-block full of expansions that I no longer want to play it because I might have to remove out the base game, or I'm almost certainly going to be showing it to somebody new, and then I have to only teach the base game, which you have to take out the extra things. There's very few games that I only play with the expansions. I think a really good one that you and I kind of agree on is the Pantheon expansion for Seven Wonders Duel. That's part of my normal teach now, is that is part of the game, even though it's an expansion.
It complements the game so well. It's almost like it's part of the base game, as you say. It's so good.
Games that add expansions that require extra rules, that require tile sets that you have to separate out, that may have come out years after the initial publication, and so are on completely different material. For a long time before Mage Knight the Ultimate Edition was out, Shades of Tesla was like, you couldn't even add it to the game because the cards were a different size, a different shade, and the tokens were different as well, which have to be shuffled together. Things like that. So Carcassonne being out for 24 years as it is, oh my god, 25 years next year, it's crazy. For it being out as long as it is, to have as many expansions as it is, I never see myself buying it. I never see myself playing it more than like once a decade at this point. However, I'd say if you haven't played it, you absolutely should try Carcassonne. It's where Meeple comes from.
It's definitely popular, and it is a humongous following. Who would you recommend it to?
Who would I recommend Carcassonne to? Anybody that had not played modern games, or anybody who plays modern games who hadn't tried Carcassonne. I would recommend it to basically everybody to try. If that's your brand of vodka, awesome. It is no longer something I want to play. And I don't think it's a bad game. It's just I played too much of it.
Totally fair. The last game that I played this week was the party game Love Letter by Seiji Kanai, published by Z-Man Games. I was able to get together with a group of friends who relatively recently moved back to the area, so we had a good time. We did a Christmas Secret Santa gift exchange, and we got Love Letter to the table. Specifically the 2019 version, which adds a couple more cards to the game than the earlier version.
I didn't know that.
Yes, yeah. So in Love Letter, it's kind of a hidden role game where every player is given a card, and the cards are the princess, the countess, the king, the prince, and they all have a different kind of ability on them. The goal of the game is to be able to target your opponents and, through the use of the abilities on your cards, eliminate them and be the last person standing. Or, if there are multiple people standing when the deck runs out, have the card with the highest value.
Love Letter's classic. To this day, I still love that game for its ability to have multiple plays. There's great interplay between people. Some of it's luck-based. You might get knocked out based on something purely out of your control, but it doesn't matter because it's so fast.
Yeah, it's really a great party game. It holds a special place for me. The friend that I played with before he even moved out of the state and now is back here, I think this was the very first hobbyist game that I played with him, 4 or 5 years ago, whenever it was, when I started getting into board gaming as kind of a hobbyist. So it really was. I think it was the first game I went out and I bought. And I have the older version, not the new 2019 version. So I guess maybe it was it had to have been 5 years ago before it came out. But it really holds a kind of a special place. And I think it's a game that, even if it doesn't get to the table that often, is never going to leave my collection.
It's true. You have an older edition, you say? Mm-hmm. Do you have the Batman edition?
Oh my. I don't have the Batman edition. I did have the Batman edition.
I'm sorry.
I was out doing...
Let me understand this. I'm pretty sure they say that possession is 9/10 of the law. And while you may have had it in your hand for, 3 seconds at that garage sale, mm-hmm. when I snatched it out of your hands and said, I'm buying this.
Thievery.
No. Hold on. That's not your property. See, I have Batman Love Letter. No idea where it is. I think it's in my small box collect. So you don't have Batman Love Letter. I do, and suck it, Red.
That is something else to mention. Love Letter has been reskinned and republished multiple times. There's a Batman version. There's a Marvel version.
Lovecraft Love Letter.
Lovecraft Love Letter, exactly. I think we've played that before. I don't know if we still have that
one. Yeah.
But Love Letter, it's a great party game. I think it plays up to 7. And it's very simple to teach, fast to teach, and the games are pretty fast too. Usually taking about 20 minutes.
You can play that game in line with your friends. I think I've actually played it in line. You just have everyone have the cards, somebody holds the deck out in their hands, and then everyone can have that in front of them, which is perfect.
Yeah, it's a great game. And now, Blue, let's move on to our next section, Board Game Standoff.
Yeah.
This week, we're going to be talking about 2 bluffing games, Skull and Cockroach Poker. Give us your thoughts on Cockroach Poker.
Okay, so let's take these one at a time. We've got Cockroach Poker by Jacques Zemet, by Die Magierspiel, and we have Skull by Harve Marley out of Lou Meme. These are both completely bluffing-based games, and as I've already intimated on this podcast, I love games that rely on other players. If it's heads down solitaire, that's fine, but I really like, and I find replayability in games where you have to be focused on the other people and the other people's actions, right? And I'm sure you could say that if you weren't good at this, it would feel like it was luck-based, but especially if you play these games with the same group of people, you will develop like tells that you're just aware of. So
No, I'm certain they're luck-based.
That's because you are terrible at, I'm pretty sure, both of these games.
I'm not good at either. I'm certain I've never won either.
Yes. So Cockroach Poker is just dead simple. It's 64 cards, 8 copies of 8 different animals, unique art. Once again, they're all unique, but they're all, there's 8 rat cards that are all different, 8 bat cards that are all different. The play is beautiful because when you give someone a card, you claim what it is. They can either say that it is that or it isn't that and call you on it and then flip the card over. If you win, if they were wrong, the card goes in front of them. If they were right, it goes in front of you. Or they can take it upon themselves to look at the card and pass it to someone else who hasn't seen it, thereby bringing the onus upon themselves to either lie or tell the truth about the card. Nothing in this world is better than someone who has the game losing card, because this is a game with one loser, or one person who loses, I should say, where they have the game losing card and they choose to look at it, and the dread you can see behind their eyes when they go, oh my god, this is a 4th fly. The dread they have when they put it back down, everyone at the table can feel the energy in the room has changed. I don't know many games that have this kind of palpability with the choices you make. It's a fantastic game.
It really is a lot of fun. Despite my not being stellar at it, it's certainly got a lot of good qualities. One thing that I tend to not like about it is if you get 2 of the same animal card, it's probably beneficial for the rest of the table to pick on you moving forward, for everyone to pass you stuff, because you're not gonna you're not gonna get every guess right if you try to, and if you choose to look at the card and then pass it on to someone else, that doesn't really save you. You now just have to bluff a different way. So if you fall behind early, or if you just betrayed someone in a game of Oath or something like that, are you familiar with that?
We'll talk about that at some point.
You might get targeted a lot, and have to be at a disadvantage.
I do agree. That game absolutely encourages, I'm going to call it socially acceptable bullying, because the person that's getting like the cards thrown at them, time and time again, they tend to feel ganged up on, especially since it is a game with a single player who will lose and a bunch of people who will win. I'll say this, the beauty is that if a card goes in front of you, it's your turn again. So if you are constantly getting people throwing stuff at you, you at least have the chance to start the ball rolling towards someone else. And invariably, eventually, someone else will have double duplicates more than you, and they can start to become the focus of the table.
Sure.
That being said, I think my favorite thing that happens in this game is when someone tries to get the same person over and over again, but they've got a weird synchronization happening and they just know what they're trying to do. I think with one of our friends, he was just honed in on me and he went, "This is a rat." I said, "No." He turned it over. It's not a rat. "This is a stink bug." "No, it's not a stink bug." Turned it over. This is a rat. Yes, it is a rat. He turned it over. It's a rat. It just like, I think 5 in a row is my maximum of just guessing correctly. And I very much guessing, but you can also see like the wheels behind the eyes. Like, ooh, what would I do in this situation? You know?
Absolutely. Yeah. It really is a fun game. If you're the type of person who likes the interpersonal, bluffing and camaraderie kind of building that you can get from a game like this, it really is good.
For sure. What about Skull? Skull is the other side of the same coin, it seems.
I think Skull, at its face, is a simpler game. In Skull, you have 4 tiles in front of you. 3 of them have flowers on them, and 1 of them has a skull. And the premise of the game is you go around the table, and you either can add an additional tile to the pile in front of you, or you can choose to start the bidding. And what the bidding denotes is the number of tiles you think that you can flip over before finding a skull. You have to start by flipping over your own tiles, and then you point to or direct other players to flip their top tiles over. Again, ideally getting whatever your bid is before you flip over a skull.
I definitely like the bidding aspect. It encourages different play styles.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have been in groups of 5 people where every single person puts down a second disc before the bid starts, which means that there's 10. You can go to a maximum of 10 when you start the bidding if people aren't going to continue putting things down. And I've played in very tight groups of 3 where everyone puts 1 down, and then the first person just goes 1, and it's great. It's a really good game that has a lot of great momentum behind it. The penalties I also really enjoy, that if you turn over someone else's skull, you lose a card randomly from your hand, or one of your tiles from your hand. If you pull your own skull because you were trying to bluff somebody, you get to choose which one you lose. And I have won multiple games of that, losing my skull as the first card out, and just having to plug along until people realize you only have flowers, at which point they're kind of like, oh, I can't risk it. I have to get points instead of just playing defense the whole time.
And that's something I do like. This game is a race to 2 points. You can't just sit on your haunches and wait, right? You have to kind of get into the game if you want to have any chance of winning.
Oh, yeah.
That also is part of something I don't like, though. This game does have player elimination. If you are unlucky enough or not perceptive enough to be able to do bidding well, or you flip over 4 skulls enough to get rid of all your tiles, you are out of the game, and you kind of just have to sit there and wait. On the cockroach poker side, if you get is it 3 or 4?
I think it's 4 of the same.
If you get 4 of the same, you lose, but the game's also over, and then you can play again. So that is a downside of Skull for me.
I hate player elimination. The only time I've ever seen it done at all well was Ankh. That was the only time I saw it done well, and because I think it was Shamrock was playing and didn't have. I think it was one of our first games. Didn't have a grasp on how points worked. I think he treated it as just a war game, as opposed to, hey, you can not fight with anybody and get a bunch of points if you go this different route with the character who's playing. And as a result, he was behind that threshold after the 2 people below him fused into that singular entity, and he was still in the red for that last little mini scoring rate. The beauty of Ankh especially is that it's not long until the game's over, right? Sure. I think he may have sat off to the side on his phone for 10 minutes while we finished the game, which didn't feel great to have him sitting out, but it also meant that the game was very close to a close, and if you were in that position at that point, you have no real hope of coming back.
Sure.
That being said, Shamrock is a person who enjoys playing the game. Had he been allowed to stay in the game, I guess we could have house ruled it, but it seems silly. Had he been allowed to stay in the game, he probably would have at least been able to play through the rounds, but he didn't really like that game anyway.
That is true. I don't think he was fond of it.
No. So here's the question. 2 games. Which one are you picking?
I mean, I feel like it's probably apparent just on the way I've been talking about them. I think, to me, the simpler nature of Skull is more desirable to me. I'm simply not as good at cockroach poker, so I'm going to have to go with Skull.
I could lean towards Skull more if I didn't like cockroach poker more. I like cockroach poker. That's my pick. But I'll say this. I have played Skull with many a random object. You got a deck of cards, you can play Skull. right? You give 3 black cards and a red card to everybody. Then everyone has the same logistical odds as before, right? We did this when we went camping one time. We were able to play Skull with just a deck of cards and have the same feel without the beautiful artwork of Herv Marley Luamim edition that we have. But my pick is Cockroach Poker because it just has such a wonderful feeling and table presence, and honestly, I think it's easier to teach than Skull.
It probably is. It's very simple. And don't get me wrong, if someone's like, hey, we're going to put together a game of Cockroach Poker, do you want to play it? Absolutely. But I'm able to go into that game knowing that I'm probably not going to win, and that's kind of freeing almost for me to be able to kind of do some crazy bluffs and try to, make something happen.
That is one of the things I deeply respect about you and I try to emulate is if someone plays a game I know I'm bad at, but there's a bunch of people that want to play it, I will play that game. Think Beyond the Sun. If you said, dude, I really want to play Beyond the Sun, I'd be like, okay, here I come. Let's do it, brother.
And I appreciate that.
I'd grit my teeth and I'd do it because I know that you enjoy that game. So there we have it. The board game standoff. Skull versus Cockroach Poker. Red chooses Skull. Blue chooses Cockroach Poker. The world is still split down the middle. Thanos would be very happy. So this brings us to our main topic of the podcast. Culling games. When do you get rid of games? That's the question we're going to ask. Red, when do you get rid of games?
That's a great question, Blue. I think it comes down to what you get out of the hobby, right? Lots of people like collecting stuff. They might not play the games as much, but they enjoy collecting them. They like having collections. I know I'm kind of that way with books. I probably collect a lot more of them than I ever read, but I get joy out of that. So if you're the type of person that wants to just collect them and enjoys supporting the publishers and the designers, that's fantastic. And, you can make that decision. I'm a hobbyist. I like playing the games. And, we don't have the biggest house in the world. So Mint and we kind of have an agreement that if there's no room on the shelf and we want to get a new game, something has to come off of the shelf for the new game to go onto it.
I like that methodology a lot. I do have a 5x5 Calyx. That thing is completely full. I do have some of the spaces that have forward-facing games, certainly the ones that I like the most or are the ones that are most visually appealing. If I'm looking at my shelf right now, I'm seeing Baseball Highlights 2045, one of my favorite games of all time. A Feast for Odin, definitely on the top 5. Spirit Island. Those games will remain forward-facing on the shelf no matter what. But if I am going to get new games, I try to get rid of old ones. And as you have found through our friendship, if there's a game that our group doesn't play, or if one of the seminal members of our game group doesn't play, I tend to get rid of it. Undaunted is a game that I love very much, and I had at one point every single Undaunted. I'm getting rid of everything except for Stalingrad because I just don't have anyone to play them with. And that's not me trying to be, a martyr for my cause. It's that these games are meant to be enjoyed with people, unless it's a solo game, obviously. A solo game is it's a kind of an outlier in our hobby. But if it's a game that I don't have anyone to play it with, it can be the most beautiful game in the world, but I'm probably not going to keep it around because I just will never get to look at it. We are lucky enough to be in a hobby that is so aesthetically oriented as well. Every single one of these that I'm just kind of glancing at my shelf, every single one of them has some element of beautiful design to make it stand out, to make it unique compared to the rest of them.
Tell me, Blue, what is the beautiful design choice of Biblios?
Oh, the beautiful design. Well, you have monks, and the monks have they have a bald spot. You know what? That's not fair, because I keep that one at work, because my coworkers like that one so much, so I don't have to look at it all the time.
All jokes aside, though, I completely understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
But yes, so, again, we've chosen to cull games, to get rid of games when our shelf is full. Sometimes, it has happened where we decide to expand our shelves so that we don't have to do that. That does happen. But I think, by and large, the system works pretty well for us, and our collection still has a little bit of room for growth on it.
It's true. So I'll say that I have two different reasons for getting rid of games. One is definitely to preserve the space because they do take up a lot of space, and I wish there would be less air inside of a lot of these boxes. But the other portion of it is that I have a friend who sells on eBay. They have a thriving eBay shop, and through them, I will put some of these games on the secondary market. not for a profit for myself, because I don't think I've ever gotten more than my money's worth back. But what I can tell you is that some of the games I've bought that I sell for even like 40% of what I paid for them, I got the enjoyment out of that game and the time. And the older I get, the more I appreciate how much time I've enjoyed, right? I don't think I appreciated sunrises when I was a young man. I was never up early in the morning. And now that I have a job where I do wake up early to go to work, I look at that sunrise and I can honestly appreciate the beautiful colors that I get to see. It's ephemeral. It's fleeting. If you just stare at it too long, it eventually goes away. You know, it's one of those things that I appreciate the time I have with the things that I do have. And if I can play a game once, get the enjoyment out of it, go, I don't think I'm going to return to that. And be able to sell that game through my friend, help his business, and also receive some of that money back, it helps a lot. On the last episode, we talked about board game stats. In board game stats, you have a line item for cost per play. Selling your games helps that cost per play, and you actually end up saying like, oh, actually, you know, I actually do. If it was $5 a play for something that I paid $60 for, that's a win in my book. $5 for 5 hours sometimes of content, or 7 hours of entertainment for myself feels like a pretty good deal if you break it down like that.
I definitely agree. You know, I kind of have a rule. I used to play a lot of video games. I don't play video games anymore. And I used to have a rule for video games that if I wanted an hour per dollar spent, right? If I'm spending $60 on a video game, I will feel like I got my money's worth for 60 hours of play. Board games don't necessarily follow that same formula. You know, I might play a game, or I might spend $50 on a game that I only play once or twice a year, you know, so it can become difficult. There are certainly games that I've gotten rid of that I enjoyed playing, similar to you and Undaunted, that I enjoy playing, but maybe the people around me don't have the same opinions on it, which is fine. I know I have had those, you know, those good memories and those good times, and so it's tough to make those decisions sometimes.
There are games in my collection that I will never, ever get rid of. I will never get rid of my copy of Tigris and Euphrates. I will never get rid of my copy of Mage Knight Ultimate Edition, as little as I am able to play it nowadays, but it's always going to be there because it's always going to be something that I love. A lot of my Uwe Rosenberg games I don't see myself selling, because even though they're somewhat similar, they have such a soft spot in my heart and they make me feel good. And at the end of the day, why do we have entertainment? You know? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely to me about being able to get together with people you like and spend time and just have a good time and chat and hopefully win at El Grande at the same time.
Have you ever Marie Kondo'd your collection?
You know, I never have Marie Kondo'd my collection, but it's not a bad idea to look at them all and figure out what brings joy to you, and if it's not doing that, if it's not bringing joy to you or your family or loved ones, then maybe it's time to go separate ways with the game.
Yeah. Especially in as materialistic a society that we live in, that I absolutely accept that my hobby is materialistic, I do still want to have the things that brings me joy. And in that way, that's, you know, why else would I be in this hobby if not to enjoy it for what its purposes are.
Exactly. Well, culling games, you know, it's sometimes a hard decision to make, but I think it's worth it to you know, curate your collection to what you truly enjoy.
I totally agree. That does it for our main topic. And now we like to end every episode the same way by asking the question. Red, you want to say it with me?
Absolutely.
Does it fart? Here we have our next game, a game that is near and dear to my heart. Now, we didn't choose the base game for this because all of my base game material plus a lot of other expansion stuff is in an expansion box, which happens to be the same size. Today's Does It Fart will be Spirit Island by R. Eric Royce, one of the greatest designers of all time. Here we go. Quiet in the studio. We're now going to find out, does it fart? I love it.
That was a great fart.
That was a great fart. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give that a 3.
A 3. Do you remember what last week, Scott? What
I don't want to tell you because you
was
have
it
started to
was
do
it
this
Sidereal
crazy
last
thing.
week?
Sidereal would be a really good one.
Oh, Tigers and Furies, right?
Yes.
And you gave that a 3.
Yeah, because I thought we agreed on a single star system, but you've decided to go to 3 decimal places,
Well, I mean,
which is insane.
yeah, well, I don't know about that.
Insane, Red.
So, Spirit Island, it was a good box fart. As you say, a little bit over full. I think maybe that hurt it a little bit. I'm going to go 2.6.
2.6. Okay, averaging a 2.8 on the Does It Fart scale for the Box Fart podcast is the game Spirit Island expansion Jagged Earth gets a 2.8 from Box Fart. That's going to do it for us, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening to us for this week. I've been Blue.
This is Red.
Have a good one. We'll see you soon. Thank you for listening to the Boxfart podcast. If you'd like to contact either Red or Blue, feel free to send an email to redblueboxfart, all one word, @gmail.com. If you feel so inclined, leave a review for us on the platform of your choice. And always remember, a piece laid is a piece played. Unless you didn't really mean to play it, in which case just go ahead and chill out, man. It's a friendly game.